When you look at strategy at Pocono, it's all about fueling, and you know you're gonna have to get gas in your car. That's the gas tax. What shocked me, one team opted to not put fuel in when I thought it was free, when the other one, they added the fuel when it was most expensive. Welcome into a new episode of NASCAR Inside the Race, presented by Consumer Cellular. I'm your host, Steve Letarte, joined by special guest, crew chief of the 77th for Spire Motorsports, Luke Lambert. Luke, you, Carson Hocevar, you tried to tackle the tricky triangle. How was your trip up to Pennsylvania?
It was a great weekend, lots of fun. Great weather for the most part, at least for our parts of the weekend. The race was fun. It was, not without its own challenges for us, but it was a really interesting race. Typical Pocono, a lot of strategy plays. It was a lot of fun.
A lot of strategy. I was a little surprised. I thought tires would have more value. In practice, Denny ran like a 21-lap run, and I'm going to say no fall off, maybe a little, a tenth or two. But overall, old tires, new tires, about the same speed.
Yeah, you see that little bit of period of time where you have some fall off in the very first part of the run, but once they've run in after about 5 laps, it was super low fall off, and that really opens the door for a lot of strategy plays. Then it becomes all about track position.
Well, and that's really what it came down to. I bring up Denny Hamlin. The guy's won there 7 times. You know he's a guy you're going to have to beat. And I thought the 11, maybe the 9, who never had clear track, the 11 had the overall speed, but in the end it was Ryan Blaney who went to victory lane. And in my mind, it was all the decision kind of closing in at the end of stage 2 and how those cars did it. Take me from a crew chief standpoint, when you study for Pocono, we talk about strategies. Well, that's because you don't lose a lap. So what information do you know going into the race about how you can pit, when you can pit, to make sure you don't lose a lap and really orchestrate the strategy?
We know we have to add a certain amount of fuel from the start of the race to the end of the race to be able to complete the day. So you have to stop multiple times to get that amount of fuel in. You can only get a little over 20 gallons in every single time you stop. So we have to factor in how many times we have to stop to get that amount of fuel in. You can have a faster stop, but that's going to have to be paid back later. So you want to try to strategize so that when you do choose to put the fuel in the car, it's the most efficient time to retain that track position.
I call it the fuel tax, right? Like you could come off pit road with the lead, but if you didn't get enough fuel in the car, you really are behind on everyone else. Denny Hamlin's leading stage 2. Good speed. Chris Gabehart comes on the radio. They were talking about saving gas, but then he flips his call and he says, hey, I need you to go. I need you to close these guys out. 15-ish seconds back, you can't come to pit road without losing a lap. So Hamlin and Gabehart know that heading into that stage, people are going to stop before the end of the stage. They're just trying to use their clean air and their pace to eliminate people to have that opportunity.
Yeah, they were making really good lap time out there, and they're watching the field of the guys behind them. And there's a break point. It's typically about 17 seconds that you have to be within the leader to be able to pit, come in and get 4 tires and get back out there and stay in front of the leader. Ultimately, when he makes the decision that he's going to go long to the end of that stage, he has made the decision that anybody that short pits him is going to restart in front of him. So the more guys he can eliminate from being able to do that, the closer he's going to be able to start to the front.
So let's run through them real quick. 11 stays out to win the stage. No surprise, take the playoff point.
That's right.
The 9 of Chase Elliott finishes second, doesn't choose to pit. I think that's purely the regular season points battle with Larson. You agree that he just values those points?
He's in a super tight battle up there. That's a big chunk of points to leave on the table, right? Being able to finish in the top 3 of the stage, you're going to get a big chunk of points right there. So, yeah, he has to take them.
Blaney, eventual winner, comes to pit road. Truex comes to pit road. The one I want to pick on, because I feel like they made the right call, but maybe not the right execution, 17 of Chris Buescher. They're losing time to Hamlin, so they pit at lap 90. I totally understand that. But then they come in and have a 9.5-second pit stop, don't wait on fuel. I've made the mistake, so this is not something we all haven't done. But I feel like there was an opportunity to put free fuel in the car. What I mean by free is he's not going to lose any more positions. He rejoined the racetrack 10 seconds in front of the leader. He could have hung out for another 2 or 3 seconds and filled his car up.
Yeah, it is an interesting call. There's one possible upside that maybe he was banking on at that point in time. By coming early and then doing a shorter stop, knowing that other guys are going to flip and come early.
Because he knows Blaney and Truex are coming.
Certainly. So he's going to try to be the first one. By having a little bit of a shorter stop, he's looking at it and he's thinking, man, maybe I can jump some of these guys and be the first one on this strategy. Now, that being said, again, he's got taxes he's going to have to pay later because he has going to have the least amount of fuel. He's going to have to pay it back later, but maybe he gets enough cautions to cover that up, and ultimately that's not really how it played out.
Well, in the end, 12 versus the 11, and we're going to look at this. I love the line graph. This is the entire day, and popular or unpopular, the fact is the only time these two cars passed each other all day long was on the pit cycle. Not one time on the racetrack did they actually get side by side and pass each other or restart next to each other. But you see the yellow line being Blaney. He pits, gives up the track position. At the stage end, the 11 pits. That kind of flips them, and to the top they go. You mentioned all day long and looking at the total of fuel. So these are the pit stops. Very similar, right? So you see over 10 seconds, both of them on their first pit stop. We're going to call that 4 tires. I think that's pretty close to full of fuel after only 30 laps, wouldn't you say?
After that amount of time, that's about full of fuel, correct.
Next wave right here, these are both 2-tire stops for both of them. I would imagine they're probably a little short on fuel at that point. Close to full, but maybe a gallon short.
Just a tick.
So then we go a little bit further, and I think the highlighted ones are the interesting ones, right? Because those are the fastest of each cycle. And the one that really jumps out to me is the split in this cycle is interesting. Because Hamlin, this is actually the biggest issue. They put so much fuel in their car, he lost some track position. That hurt the 11.
Waiting on fuel right here is a much more expensive time in the race to wait on fuel.
Yeah, that's kind of how I looked at it. You know you have to get it in. It sounds weird because at 200 miles an hour, you would think you don't want to spend time on pit road. But because the field is spread out, I would much rather have longer pit stops under green. And when you mention under green, the thing that jumps out to me is there are 2 stops. This one for Blaney, that's before the end of stage 1 and before the end of stage 2, where every pit stop of Denny Hamlin's was under yellow. The 12 car purposely, like this is on the aggressive side, they shorted stage 1 and they shorted stage 2. And I like that idea. I like pitting under green when you can get away with it.
Yeah, 100%. They're just trying to do everything they can to set them up for track position, starting stage 3.
So we talked about the expensive pit stop for the 11, and it's this one right here. I kind of looked at it. I was trying to see if they had an issue because 14 seconds I thought was a bit shocking. Right sides is normal. If we pause it right here for a second, one thing to look at, we see this orchestration a lot. Tire changer's not in a hurry because he doesn't have to.
Yep.
This is all about fuel, so he's just waiting, right, for the fuel man to finish can 1.
They're going to completely dump that first can right there before he goes under.
So that looks normal. Second exchange is fine. He might have bounced one time on the plug-in, but not enough to make a difference. Just look how long he sits here. And why we think it's so expensive is because this is what it looks like. Let's go on board. Left side's jacked up. We're waiting. We're going to drop the jack, and we're going to wait on fuel. This is fine. But then look at what a half a second would have been for a difference right here. Larson leaves at the same time, but look who fills in between Larson and Hamlin, right? To the right, you're going to see Bowman. To the left, Chase Elliott. Well, I think we see Logano up here as well. There's Byron.
Now we're losing spots right here. You can count them all around us.
I mean, so that's, now you're talking a gallon of fuel cost them 5 spots. That's actually one reason why I like pitting as close to turn 1 as possible, because I have been in races where you literally just watch people come down pit road and drop the jack as they get near you.
Yep. And the other benefit to that is if you're one of those guys on the far end of pit road, you can actually pull out and actually cut people off. You kind of see what happened right there. The 48 rolls outside the 11. He's kind of got to check a little bit not to get into him. Guys start coming out of their box. You actually can get checked up because of guys pulling out in front of you.
All right, so now let's talk about the what-ifs. We know Blaney won by shortening the stage. How does Hamlin win this race? Because I think there's a path at times. End of the stage, loses his track position. We see it going down here. Then we have this long green flag run. And, he's fast. So, he's trying to basically catch the leader and have a shorter pit stop. The question I have is, do you think Blaney and Hamlin started the final stage with the same amount of fuel, or do you think Blaney was short looking at the pit stop?
So Hamlin would have had more fuel because he filled his up under caution. He waited. The 12 waited when they came and pitted, but they did it earlier and they had to run some green flag
Right, so they
laps.
burned some fuel off.
So they burned some fuel off. So the 11 car has the most fuel in it of this 2 that we're comparing right here. So he is going to be able to have a faster stop. Really what Gabe Hart and that group needs is for it to go green, for them to capitalize on that opportunity to have a little bit more fuel, to have a faster stop. That's not what happened, and I think that really is what kind of set the stage for them to not ever get that chance to jump the track position later.
And you see they were close because when they did come under yellow, I mean, you see the big gain they had. Now, most of that 6 spots was the speed of the pit stop. They got a little fortunate. 5 and the 9 got busted for speeding. So he got to second, but then in the end, Blaney just no mistakes went off, kind of drove off in the distance. Have we seen Blaney do at Pocono before?
100%. It was a solid day, well executed, great strategy by the 12 group.
Do you like these types of races?
I enjoy them a lot because it just opens up the door for a lot of different decisions. When you go to a track where you got a lot of fall off and you need to put 4 tires on it every time, it takes some of these opportunities to make these strategy decisions out the window because it's a little more cut and dry what to do when the caution comes out. These races, particularly one thing that's interesting about Pocono is you can pit. There's a big group of cars that can pit and not lose a lap.
Yeah.
So that just opens up the door for all kinds of strategy decisions you don't see at a lot of places we go.
Well, we talk a lot about speed on the racetrack, but speed on pit road was a point of conversation at Pocono. Luke and I will break it down next. Pocono winner Ryan Blaney was also part of the NASCAR Insiders Roundtable presented by Goodyear. Blaney, his dad Dave, as well as Harrison and Jeff Burton joined host Kyle Petty to talk about NASCAR's family history and what it's like for legacy drivers at NASCAR's highest level. Watch the NASCAR Insiders Roundtable presented by Goodyear on NASCAR's YouTube channel.
Hey race fans, Corey LaJoy here. Join Ryan Flores and myself for Stacking Pennies each week. I'll break down my race and explain what happened right out of my windshield.
Plus, we award the Dogs of the Week for the best pit crews and go in-depth on all the money stops, pit road mistakes, and penalties.
And we've got a ton of guests. We have SVG stopping by. We had Ricky Stenhouse after he punched Kyle Busch in the face. We've had Bubba. We've had all sorts of guys in here in the Nonsense Garage, so you do not want to miss it. Check us out on Sirius XM Channel 90, YouTube, or wherever you find your podcasts. Each and every week, Stacking Pennies. That's what's up.
Some costly penalties in the last pit cycle at Pocono. We saw Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott. I saw the 99 of Suarez, and I believe the 54 of Ty Gibbs all get busted for speeding at Pocono in Section 7. A lot of conversation about pit road, Section 7. You had no trouble.
We were fortunate enough not to have any trouble. It was a very uncharacteristic day, having a lot of penalties in one segment on pit road. We do see this, but it's very uncharacteristic.
NASCAR doesn't use radar guns. Speed is calculated time over distance. Basically, there's the transponder. We talked about it a lot on this show this year with the photo finishes. Right, that transponder goes across loop lines, and however long it took you to go across that distance, that's how fast you were traveling.
That's correct, and that's relying on NASCAR having the correct measurements for the distance between those lines. And you know, there's a margin of error. Just like every single measurement that you take in this earth, it's going to have a margin of error, and this is no different here. NASCAR does allow us to see what that margin of error looks like prior to the race, which is part of the reason why you should be able to avoid it.
Let's just remind everybody, pit road speed is 55 miles an hour. NASCAR doesn't penalize you until you go over 60. They give you a 5-mile-an-hour grace period. So when you see 60.1, you're not 0.1 technically over the speed limit. You're 5.1. They just give you a 5-mile-an-hour grace period?
Yeah, you're using all of that range plus a little bit. You know, NASCAR does give you a margin that you can work within, and you're using that extra amount. Looking at pit road right here.
Yeah, so left to right, right? We see this a lot, but it can be very overwhelming to see it with all the lines. You enter left, turn 3, you're going down pit road, exiting turn 1. So from left to right, all of these are the loops, right? These are the loops that are cut into pit road.
That's correct. Section 7 is the one where we saw the issues.
So help me, Section 7, basically right here.
Yeah, and one thing of note, these are not drawn to scale. The distances
I was wondering why it looked so narrow.
The distances are shown below here. This section segment 7 is about the same distance as some of the other pit stalls. The reason for that is there's a huge opening in between stall 31 and 30, and so they've just got it scaled down.
So it's not drawn to scale. So now you roll down pit road at the beginning of every race, single file, to check your pit road speed.
That's correct. It's a great decision that NASCAR's put that in. Now this gives the opportunity to define what the rules are going to be for the day. You know, everybody knows that we have to be within the speed limit. We have to have an opportunity to correlate that to our TAC and our RPM that the teams program in for the drivers to see. So we get that opportunity to come down and see where we're going to be speeding or not.
So there's a lot here. So okay. On the left, car numbers. That's all everybody on pit road, because this is before the race. Everyone's on pit road at once. We are literally going from the left side of the screen to the right. I know that sounds silly, but we'll go back once again. This matches pit road, right? So here's pit road. We're going left to right, down. You see all the loops, right? Loop 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 18. So now if we go back to this spreadsheet and you look at the top of the screen, there is basically loop 1 to 18. Now if we go up and down on the spreadsheet, that is all the miles an hour. You are allowed 59.99. You see a ton of numbers. The most important thing to see is red. NASCAR, this is exactly what they use in the tower. If you pop up in red, you see the car number in red, that meant they had a red box over here somewhere. That meant that they were speeding. This is pre-race. When you look at this, this jumps out at you. Everyone in the same section.
This is a huge outlier from what we normally see every week. Typically, guys roll down pit road, you'll see a handful of guys speed in one segment or another. very unusual that we would see the whole field speed, particularly in one single segment. So when you see this happen, as a crew chief and team looking at it when we're doing our free roll, it's clear that there's something amiss by the way they're calculating, and it's something that doesn't line up with what the teams were expecting. That being said, we know what the ground rules are going to be, so it's up to the teams to recognize this and make their adjustments and ensure they don't speed later.
So you're right here. So literally walk me through this, right? So you're right here above my yellow line. You had a red box. You're good actually in the zone. Then another red box. Are you reading those to car? Somebody comes down pit road?
There's a little bit of a time delay. Typically, he doesn't hear them till later because they're not popping up on the screen completely in real time. But I'm reading them as he goes. As he goes, he kind of is able to hear what the speed was 2 or 3 segments behind. So he has a recognition as he's going down pit road. I'm either close or I'm in my range, or I need to make an adjustment. So the guys can hear that as they're going down pit road, make an adjustment and calibrate their lights.
Well, so let's talk about that. You mentioned lights. We're on board with Kyle Busch. I'm going to really just zoom in so we get a really good look at what's going on. This is the digital dash. The lights, it's just a gradient. Everybody does it different. You can have green lights, yellow lights, red lights, a number of lights.
Yeah, it's completely driver preference. You can even do it with numbers if you want. It doesn't have to be a string of lights. That just seems to be the visually most effective way to communicate it.
So I've paused it at red lights on the bottom row all the way up to the line. There's also a set of lights on the top row. I don't know how Kyle runs his lights. That's really proprietary, how he wants to do it. So I'm going to move this forward. I'm going in slow motion because they move around a lot, right? But you see the bottom row jumps from a couple above to one below, right? Now he's a couple above, and now he lifts because I think he's coming into his pit box. So that is basically, it's almost a video game. It's like he's just trying to keep the lights nearest the setting that the team has decided. I assume everyone still runs second gear. That's the gear in choice?
Typically. It does vary from time to time, but typically.
So how hard is it to keep the lights to the line? And is it still, when I was around, like Dover was very hard. The gear ratio at Martinsville kind of had a little bit of chug to it. Pocono was actually one of the better tracks. You could kind of run a constant speed.
So, most of the teams have the engines dialed in to where it's not too difficult, but the question of how hard it is just depends on how good do you want to be at it. It all comes down to how tight of a range do you want to be able, as a driver and team, to hold your RPM, and that's going to allow you to get closer and closer to the limit. And so to be the very best, you have to be really tight, varying your speed no more than 2 or 3 tenths of a mile per hour all the way down pit road, and that's going to allow you to set your pit road speeds that much closer to the limit of speeding.
I was trying to see who I was going to pick on here. I'm going to use Kyle Busch since we looked at his lights. So I'm going to zoom in, right? So we're going to take Kyle Busch. So 60-0, 58-8, 59-0, 60-0-0, dead on the money, 58-4, 59-3. There's your speeding, which you can see is a big jump, right? 59-3 to 60.6 down to 58-9, right? So that seems to be a big jump. So now what do you do when you see that? Do you then say, hey, that's around the start-finish line, I want you to back down your lights at that point?
Typically what my approach would be to look at the pit stalls that are around it. That's the easiest way to visually communicate that to the spotter, and then say to the spotter, when he gets in that zone, tell him to check his speed in between X pit stall and Y pit stall.
Yeah, and I've even seen like Pocono has a little uphill, a little downhill, like the car kind of wants to roll on you.
Yeah, there's all sorts of variables that can cause stuff like this to create error for the teams, and so it's recognizing what it is and just playing within that rule.
And I'll tell you, I've tested it. Jeff Burton and I go out in the pace car normally at the beginning of every weekend. I'll set the crews and run down pit road. We aren't as good as the drivers. They do a better job with the lights than literally cruise control could do because of uphills, downhills, the shape of pit road. It's impressive how well they do.
Yeah, it's a very complicated part of solving a simple problem in our race.
Well, the 9 of Chase Elliott was one of the drivers who got caught speeding at the end of the race, but even with that challenge, he leapfrogged the 5 of Kyle Larson in the regular season points. We're going to talk about regular season championship points and the bubble next.
I'm Ryan Flores. Join Kim Kuhn and myself each and every week right here at Around the Track. Whether you are going to the racetrack or watching from home, we get you ready for all things national and regional level.
And we'll tell you who and what to watch for each week. Plus, we get you ready for the weekend at the racetrack, and Erica will help you place your bets to win some easy money.
Be sure to check out Around the Track every Wednesday on NASCAR's YouTube channel.
All right, we talked about regular season championship. I think this is super interesting. Let's remind everybody, these are the season standings for the regular season championship. What I want to highlight are these pluses out here. These are the awards, right? If you win the championship, you get 15 playoff points, 10 for second, 8, 7, 6, and it goes down by 1. That isn't really why I believe we saw the 9 stay out and took those points, because he's trying to beat Larson for this regular season championship.
Yeah, just because these guys are locked into the playoffs doesn't mean they're still not racing points. They're up there trying to capture all of those playoff points.
And to remind everybody, in 5 points, that's a race win. I mean, 5 playoff points is what you are awarded to win a race. You get 1 point for a stage.
Yeah, and so, if you get an opportunity to bank those stage points, it's putting you that much closer to capturing those playoff points at the end of the regular season.
So here's the top. Now let's talk where the stress really is. Unfortunately, we're going to put you on this screen because this is where the stress is. Indy, Richmond, Michigan, Daytona, and Darlington. That's what's left in the regular season. When I look at Martin Truex at plus 137, I'm thinking he's great. Gibbs, Buescher, Chastain, while their numbers look good, I don't think they feel good because a new winner moves the line, right? So this 67 turns into 40 if somebody goes in here, right? If we have a new winner. And I think we've seen so many new winners, you have to look at it that way. Matter of fact, if I'm Gibbs, Buescher, Chastain, not only to be assured I'm in the playoffs, but to think I can advance in the playoffs, I really think you have to feel like you're a winner. Chastain said it the best. He said, not winning is unacceptable for the one team. I love the line.
Yeah, I think that you said it, though. I mean, these guys are looking at what could get eliminated. I mean, even between the 54 and the 17, that turns into 23 points if we get 2 new winners. So those guys are not comfortable right now.
So I think it's everyone on the right side, you included, 172, you're thinking win. Has to be a win, anyone over there.
100%.
Do you believe that this guy can make up 27 points?
I really feel like looking at this page right here, he's probably the biggest threat for a potential win. When you look at the 5 races
for a win, not even the points. You mean to just win the old-fashioned?
I mean, I really think he's a big threat for the actual win.
Yeah, I agree. Right.
When you look at the 5 races to go, there's a lot of tracks that their team has been strong at.
Yep.
And so I feel like Richmond is one that they could potentially be really strong at. Bubba always runs well at Daytona, although that's one where you could see a lot of different guys do well. I could see him potentially stealing it at Darlington. I mean, there's quite a few opportunities for him left.
Indy, I believe that you're going to have a good car, but I think guys on the right side of the screen with track position could hold off and win that race. Richmond, there are some short track, we talk about Josh Berry. I know Kyle Busch is having an awful year, but I don't know.
And tested there.
And I'm just not ready to get, I just still don't believe it. I know I should because the stats would say it. The guy, 19 years in a row, I'm not ready to throw the towel in on year 20 yet. Michigan, Daytona, Darlington. So it's going to be a battle. We're heading to the Oval. I know you've crew chief there. Your excitement level to go back across the Artiback bricks the right direction, turning left, running all 4 corners.
Yeah, it's a special facility. I'm looking forward to it. The perception of speed there as a competitor on pit road being so close to the front stretch is just really something that's special to be a part of. And so much history there.
So much history and so much excitement. You get to watch it yourself Sunday, 2:30 on NBC.